Hi, everybody. I think we are live and people are joining us now. Welcome to the latest CTO Craft Bytes. Today, we are going to be looking at the importance of incident management. So if this is your first time at CTO Craft Bytes, let me tell you a little bit more about the group. CTO Craft is a mentoring and coaching community for technology leaders all over the world. And we focus on supporting technologists in their leadership growth. Community members are currently just over 5,000, and CTO Craft provides them with one-to-one coaching, mentoring groups, a curated Slack community, and events like this one. Big thanks today to the headline partner, which is AWS, for helping make these Bytes events possible. I'm going to be hosting today. My name is Emma Hopkinson-Spark, and I'm Chief of Staff at a technology consultancy called 101 Ways, where I lead the coaching and transformation practice. With me today is John Wards. John, why don't you introduce yourself for everybody?
Hey. I'm head of software engineering at The Economist, so I'm responsible for economist.com, the mobile apps, and all the consumer-facing so if you're trying to buy a subscription from us or renew, that's my teams look after that. So that's what I'm doing at the moment.
Great. So any time during the conversation, do please ask a question. Down below the video, you'll see a little link that says ask a question. I will try and keep an eye on it and try and figure out the software as we go. And yes, today we're going to be talking about importance of incident management then, John. So why are you so passionate about that then? What makes it so interesting?
I think I've got this memory from when I first really cared about incident management. It's weird that it sticks in my mind. I was worked at a small web agency in Oxford, and at the time, I think I was technical director there, and we had, it was like 5 or 6, 7 engineers, and we had a bunch of agency type clients, but we weren't very mature, quite young and things like that. And then we got a new director came in, and we had a downtime, and we just dealt with it how we normally dealt with it, just fixed it and moved on. Apologized to the client. Well, we said sorry to the client and things like that. But the new director that came in went, I've got a template for you, John, for future incident management. Just asks a few questions. But for the next time, this time, can we just run through it and things like that? And I went, all right then. And it was really obvious questions. But those obvious questions, we got the learning, and it was almost, I do look back at it, it's like a light went on and went, oh, hello, right? Oh, this is important. And it was just like, how do you stop this happening again? Why did it happen? What was the impact? How many customers were affected? Those things, and those questions, talking to the engineers and the client, you really got insights into making it happen, making it better and things like that. So that, I think that was the spark, and it's just from there to the point where I took that template when I left and used it in my next place, and it's evolved from there. So that's the sort of spark.
I guess it's that though, isn't it? Because that kind of stuff, it's quite common sense actually when you think about it, but you can be so close to the problem or the incident at the time that it's happening that you kind of forget to ask that stuff. Yeah,
and I think that was the other insight, was like, we've been fixing it and we were proactive, fixing things at 3 o'clock in the morning, not even considering the issue about it, just getting it done because we cared about the client. So that bit didn't need fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good, but it was the further learning stuff. It was like, whoa, all right, super obvious.
Yeah.
Wish I spotted it myself, but can't think of everything.
So that leads to an interesting, I guess, direction of it as well, is like you say, you're there and you're 3 o'clock in the morning and you're fixing it, but that's not the time to start to think about, where did this come from? And what's the real reason for that? When is a good time? At what point are you, because there's different phases, isn't it? So as you're looking a bit closer or you're thinking of other things, when is it a good time? Probably not 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
it's a big alert.
I generally, and the instance now are more mature, is as soon as the call, if it's out of hours or 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, starts wandering into diagnosis. If I'm on the call, I generally go, let's leave this now. Let's leave this for tomorrow and get that call set up and get that meeting to start diving in. It's the right things to think about, but let's get back to our lives. And sometimes engineers go, yeah, but we just need to gather some data now. It's right at the moment they need it. I'm like, cool, I'm off. Everyone that's not needed to do that, but I'll keep an eye on it. I'll be back. Make sure you only do that and leave. right? Because the balance, getting this your home life balance is important. But then, yes, you move in as soon as possible, like the next working day, or if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and somebody's tired, maybe in the afternoon or the following day. But as soon as possible, as soon as the feelings and the information's fresh, it's very important to do that. Dig in.
Okay. And I guess there's some advantage, though, to having some distance from it as well, to kind of do a deep dive thinking on it as well. Do you think while it's fresh and into the next day is always the best time to do it, or is there bigger learnings at different times?
I think the next day's good for while it's fresh and getting the pain and getting data, because depending on your systems, logs might be disappearing and things like that. So as soon as possible to get in there, but I think it's always worthwhile coming back. So generally, I have a few review stages on an incident and a post-mortem. The team does it and they go around, and then before we do a wider thing, say we'll look at it again. I'll look at it the next day. I might follow up, and that takes another 24 hours just to dig back in. Have they missed something? And by that time, oh yeah, right, and we go around the loop again. So time, it's like going for a walk when you're in a problem, right? It's
you need to clear your head a little too.
Yeah, but with I've found with incidents, especially if your systems are not so mature, you might lose your logs. And as soon as you get, it depends on your systems. Time is useful, but so is, it's a hard balance. There's not a right or wrong answer on that one, I don't think.
Okay. I guess sometimes it depends on what the incident is as well, as to how much digging into it you do. So who else would you involve then? You say, are you still doing being on call with people at 3 o'clock in the morning now?
No, I'm always on call is what I tell my team if they need me. But with my role now, I run disruption. I'll give covering fire to the team is generally my role. But even then now, I've got managers that report into me who can play that role if I don't need me. Depends on the seriousness of the incident. If Economist.com's down, the CEO is going to be up and interested about it, and she's going to be speaking to my boss, and my role there is to keep the executives informed while the team goes about doing that and making sure that they're aware that we have to provide information, but also leaving them time and not on top of them all the time. Right. I generally try and so if we say we've got like a active Slack channel where things are happening, we'll say next update will be on the bottom of the hour, and even if it's no update, we haven't learned anything. Mm-hmm. I will be there I'll leave them alone. I'll come in going, any update? Nothing yet. Right, in, because I know who the externals are looking at the clock. They're watching it, and as soon as it ticks, they're in, looking, waiting for that answer. So that's, I think, a key, that communication key role for the external stakeholders to buy the team time to fix anything that's critical. It's really, but sometimes incidents are not customer facing. You're firefighting, you're putting a fire out before it hits a customer, you've been alerted. And so sometimes you don't need to do that. You might give a heads up, we might need something, so we're primed and ready to do comms externally, but actually the team's got it. They've put the fire out. 10 customers were affected and we dealt with it, but so it's not, you don't need that communication all the time. Again, it's like there's a bunch of things in your toolbox.
Right. I guess you must have some right war stories, and we could probably fill an hour just filling them as well. From experience, one of the things that I would say a little bit from the outside in as well is kind of I've seen an awful lot of engineers and organizations that in the moment are very much, okay, this has happened. How do we fix it? How do we get more alerting around it so we know if it happens again? And I've always felt, well, not always, doing customers a disservice maybe, but I'm often feeling a little bit like I'm pushing the agenda of, okay, great, set up those alerts and those monitors so that you know if it happens again and can fix it quicker. But how about we take that step further and actually look at why it happened in the first place and how you can stop it happening again in the first place. And that always feels like quite a hard drum to beat sometimes, that people are quite focused on how do we know about it quicker? How do we fix it quicker, rather than how do we prevent it happening? Do you see that conflict too, or
I guess so. No, and I think the reason why I've not is because of that template. I think that
right.
template has that question first. How do we stop this happening again?
Everyone's going to be asking for that template, don't you?
Yeah, I'll find it. It's kicking about. It's thankfully I've got a service delivery manager who helps with all this these days, and she's got her own one, which is very similar and I've fed into, but it's different. So, but yeah, I can dig out the standard questions and look at dropping that in the CTO Craft Slack later, if needed. But those, I think, leading with that one question: how do we stop this happening again?
Right.
And actually, the Economist, our focus was on that, which we got really good at, and we have got really good at our incident management. The team are really responsive, but now I'm like, right, that's great. How do we make the downtime shorter? Right.
Great.
Not, so I've started with the not stopping it happen again, but they do, right? They, as well as you can do that same class of incident likely to happen again, less likely, but still. So if it does, how do we make it shorter and start focusing on that? Now we've flexed those muscles, that ownership muscles, those I care about this. Next, in my mind, is the second bit is how do we make this shorter? Okay. Economist.com went down early last year, and it was quite serious downtime to the point we had to rebuild our infrastructure because our state management got in a real bad state. So we fixed it. And we went, how do we fix this, make sure this doesn't happen again? And we did that. We rebuilt our infrastructure, our deployment pipeline and all that sort of stuff, right? So we made that investment. It was really great. But while we're thinking about it is, actually, if this happened again, we'd fix this really quickly. Then it went down again. We had a similar downtime, and it went from hours down to 25 minutes down. And we looked at that and went, we could actually fix that in 5. If we'd got, and that was like, how do we stop this again? Well, that was actually this, but we could fix that. If we knew where to look for the documentation to fix the thing, we spent 10 minutes going, is it in GitHub or is it Confluence? Where's the rollback button? Oh, it's here. We did that and we looked back and went, we could have done that in 5, which is brilliant, right? It's great. Mm-hmm. Next time, 5, or maybe even automated, right? If we're lucky, but it's maturity. You're not running straight for that. Definitely not. It's slowly.
Okay, leads on. I guess so. There's 2 things then we were talking about, which was, how can I fix this quicker if it happens again? How can we prevent this from happening again? And then there's just a question that's popped up below, which I will look at now. It says, while it's great to do, and this is Ken that's asked this question. While it's great to do what's happened and what will stop it happening again, that it still seems fairly reactive. So do you do any kind of scenario planning? So what might happen? What might be the impact of the business, and try and fix it before it might happen?
So we have done some tabletop exercises around and that was security related tabletop exercises. So we know a lot about our stuff. If the bad guys knew what we knew, what could they do to us? Right. And we were doing that, especially around actually the US election, just in case. Okay. And that was interesting. I think we did throw out a few things, and it flexed those muscles. So you can do that, and we're looking at doing that more often. I think that's a level of maturity that's down here. If you haven't got that ownership and the engineer's ability to fix and flexing those muscles, I think it's in my mind, I think we would only have, if I'd done that first with teams, there'd be a bit like, this is like playing it rather than the direct benefit. Oh, right, hang on, that means if I do get called out, this is less likely to happen. So there's a more ownership. So I think, yes, I do think it's a good idea.
I can already hear the conversations about balancing priorities, and are we going to spend our time, preemptively trying to fix something that might never happen, and all the delivery pressure starts to come. I can already hear those arguments raging.
Yes, me too. Actually, you brought it up. So it's hard, and I think something that I need to caveat. a lot of my experience has not been in banking and critical health
critical
systems,
stuff.
Content management systems, e-commerce systems, and it's not as critical. So I think, my advice is really focused around there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. But it does also, I guess, lead to something we touched on the other day when we were just catching up was, and I think I related again that experience that I got of a very embarrassing former life of incident management from a health and safety perspective as well. And, there's a reason why the HSE record near misses when it comes to stuff that might happen, which kind of leads into that what might go wrong rather than just what has gone wrong. And I think you said before that the near miss stuff probably isn't something that we track very well as an engineering.
It's not. So I think I've seen, it's stuff you see in Slack going, oh, glad we caught that in staging.
Yeah.
Glad we caught that. And I think, again, that's a level of maturity I'd like to get to let's start treating that as a production incident. We're starting to talk about that in our mobile team, because mobile, with the cadence of release, you've got gateways, app store, so you have to bundle up things more. And while there are ways of internal alpha teams and things, alpha testers, to speed up feedback, well, we're not quite there yet. But what we are doing is, when we're catching stuff at QA, we're starting to measure how much stuff's failing when it hits QA, right? So still that sort of change fail rate, but at a sort of much more smaller in dev, in sprint level, and starting having those communication and flexing those muscles, going, oh, if that got hit production, if we'd missed that, and mobile, that's even bigger incident, because getting 1 million people to update their devices because you've broken something is not great. The website, you just turn it off and on again, they've got the new site. So it's it's an interesting challenge. But that near miss stuff is quite interesting. That conversation sparked some thoughts in my mind.
Excellent. The something you touched on a little bit through all of the conversation so far is that sense of ownership, I guess, of the fact that, like we said before, who's going to get called out at 3 o'clock in the morning when it goes wrong. How much of your role do you think is inspiring that ownership, or how do you drive it, and where's the importance really of that in doing good incident management? Yeah,
and so this it's John's way of thinking about software engineering is all about engineers owning and caring about stuff. There's a sweary version of that, but
but we're recording, so maybe we won't. Yeah, okay.
Really caring about their code and the impact that has on customers. So that's an ethos that I have, and I'd like to inject into teams that I work with. And the quick fix for that is put engineers on call, right? You build it, you run it, you make sure it at 3 o'clock in the morning when it breaks, you fix it, you own the alerts, you know if it's broken, you add the alerts if you need to cover it for a future incident. Really important, I think. But also equally important is the ability for the engineers team who have been called out to get to fix the thing the next day, to actually overrule the priority, because it's got to be a two-way street, right? So if we've asking an engineer to fix something, they're going, right, I've turned it off and on again, but I'm not waking up again tomorrow night to turn it off and on again. I'm going to stop that happening again. And that's something I try and make sure that my teams are aware that, okay, we're on call, but I will back you to overrule in sprint priority to fix that thing, and that you'll get that covering fire for me. And I don't need to use that. It's like a given, which is great, but you always need that insurance policy, right? Oh, we've got this deadline. Well, I'm not getting up at 3 o'clock tomorrow night to fix that. It is really key, and having that conversation with product managers. And product managers, they're humans too, and they go, oh yeah, all right, fair enough. Yeah, who knew, right? And they do care as much as you. But it's having those conversations. And now again, going back to, I only work in content management systems and e-commerce systems. We're not doctors, we're not nurses, and that's something I also say to engineers. Look, we have escalation policies. If it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you just sleep through, you leave your phone in your car. I don't know if Zach's on the call, but if Zach's on, hi Zach, if you've left your phone in the car, it's fine. It rolls into somebody else. Not everyone will have left a phone in the car, right? It doesn't matter. It's no big deal, right? It's a 15-minute, slightly longer. Again, if you work for somewhere that's more important, that might be different. But you have to handle that differently, and you have to you'll have first line support and round the sun support and things like that. I think that's differently. How you'd handle that differently. Yeah.
So to some places though, that represents quite a shift, when you've got engineers that, that their job is the day job, and it's support that go and manage the incidents, and they know that if there's a problem, they'll go run this script and that'll fix it. And so to try and shift the culture where it's much more, hey, you wrote it, you own it, you fix it, that can be quite a shift and quite a challenge.
It can be. I worked at one place where we made the shift overnight, and it was quite radical. It was an American-led company, so they were quite blasé. I joined at the same time as the new boss, and the ops team hated the engineers. They literally hated them. There was two of them, and they like daggers. They were separate room. And it's because the ops team had to go up every night, and they were getting 3 or 4 calls a night sometimes to go in, and it was all the engineers. It's engineers' code, and they hated them. I landed at the same time as the boss. I was in as an engineering manager. He came in and went. Engineering managers are all on call. I'm on call as well. Everyone's on, and the ops people, you're off call. Second line, so we might need to call you out if we might need to fix something we don't know, but you're off call for a month. You lot are on call, so there was 4 of us, and I was new, so I was learning the system. But the boss was new as well, so he stood up and went, I'll be first line as well. Funnily enough, the number of calls went from 3, 4 a night to 1 a week pretty quick. It was weird that. I don't know why, and it'd been like that for 2 years.
Right.
It wasn't good, and then it went really quickly to 1 a week to then. So I do remember going, oh God, I was on call this week. I'm going to get at least 1, which was better, but still we were getting to the point. Oh, we need to fix that thing. Right? So we got it to where you would go on call and you wouldn't get called out. Right. But that's a real culture shift overnight. But it worked really well.
And what did that do to the relationship between ops and engineers then? Or did they still hate them?
There was a lot of water under the bridge, so I think there was more respect and they could talk to each other.
Okay, it's a start.
It was got better, but it's more of my more interesting war stories walking in on that. They used to have Nerf in that office, but it got banned because there was an incident as well. So I don't know what the incident was, and we weren't allowed to talk about the incident.
Oh man, I really want to know now. Yeah, we used to have Nerf wars, and that was banned when we started putting drawing pins on the end, which is a whole different level of incident management, which probably not. Okay, so back to that kind of retro lessons learned, what you do afterwards when you're picking over the bones of it. Can you just walk me through a good example of that? Who's involved? How do you operate it? What level of detail do you go into? What does good look like in that kind of session for you?
So I like having someone that's not been involved in the incident, doing the information gathering and going through the template.
Cool.
So we've got a good service delivery team here at the Economist who facilitate that for us. They're not there. They might have been involved, but they're off to one side. So they go through the templates, and it's almost, it's like in agile ceremonies, you have your Scrum Master, etc., just keeping us on point, right? And so they try and keep us on point, keep us focused. So that's good. And then
and the same in those agile ceremonies, though, having somebody neutral do that means that everyone that is involved in it and has skin in the game can actually contribute to it without having to too many people try and facilitate it themselves, which is probably
And if it's say it's the lead and you're like, hang on a minute, I just got to make that note, and it's hard to do that context. Well, I find it hard to do that context switch, right? And so having that external part is so useful. And it doesn't have to be an incident management person. It could just be another engineer who wasn't involved. It doesn't need to be that. specialism. Just anyone who can just ask the questions and keep you on point. Very useful. And then from there, it's making sure you dig into the why. It should always be a process problem, right? It's never a people problem.
Right.
And having it, and I guess introducing something like this to a new team, it's very important for me to make sure it's repeated often and regular, that it's safe to fail. Right? It's safe, with that safety to fail and be honest about failing, you get more information about why it broke, rather than I'm not going to tell them. Right.
So careful to walk that line of, is it a witch hunt for who's to blame, rather than actually, like you say, process issue.
It's always a process problem. It's always a process problem. Right. In the extreme, it might be a hiring process problem. Right. If you want to really walk it all the way back, I've never hit that problem, but it's always a process problem.
Yeah.
So that's the sort, and I do that. I'll when I start doing these things, I'll lead with that. Like, start the meeting. Remember, this is a process problem. It's no one personally is at blame. You won't be judged. This is not. It's repeating it often, to the point where in teams, it's almost a badge of honor the first time you break production. Like,
excellent,
right? Yay! You broke production for the first time. The junior engineer breaks production for the first time. Cool, right? You have to watch it, because some people don't get the humor, so you have to make sure that everyone's aware that while that's, so it's always make sure your culture's right on that one. But the reason it's and being I think demonstrating failure, like the number of times I've broke production and recounting those, especially to the junior engineers, recounting your war stories, makes it safe to fail. I think people are more, I've lost some servers and not having any backups and things.
Okay.
Cancelled a server backup contract once. I don't think I need that. Not sure what that's for. Don't need it.
Oops.
Turns out that we did need it. 4 months later. Anyway.
But we learned.
We do. And it's all about that learning. So I think introducing it is very important, and making sure it's safe to fail. Because, and it's like the airline industry, when they have an airline crash, nobody goes to jail for it, because otherwise you're not going to get the learning. While we're not the airline industry, taking that attitude, is helpful. I wish sometimes, though, I remember British Airways, they do it with their planes, but they don't seem to do it for their IT. I remember they switched up. I think the credit card processing went down or something, because somebody unplugged the server at Hoover or something, and somebody got fired for it. Not like, hang on, if you treated that incident like you did if an airplane crashed, you probably would have learned something. But it's funny that, but I think that's
learning more from they take it more seriously if it's a server gone down than if there's a plane gone down. Yeah. And so in the actual meeting then, and how you're running those, how are you tracking those learnings, those recommendations? What about ownership of resolutions? And because sometimes the learnings are bigger, like you say, it might be a process issue that's right back to how you've done procurement, or some tech decision that's been made way out of the team's control. How do you follow up on that stuff?
Well, it's using the Economist as an example. That's one key role service delivery provide, is they will go, right, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, these actions, right? Which are they going on a Jira backlog, or are they going on ours, just to make sure that they get done? So again, it's just some straightforward project management.
Okay.
Just following through, not making it any more complicated than that. Now, if you don't have that project management structure, it's, well, the engineering team need to take ownership of it, exposing that. We share these incident reports. So like, I see them, so I'll go, oh, that action, right? I'll bear that in mind. And I might speak to whoever it is. It's how are we getting on with that? Is it, do you need help? Do you need help to prioritize it? Because what we don't want to do is have an action which we don't follow up, and the next incident management is the same action. right? That's the point. The point of not of doing this is not to have it in the list again, right?
Yeah.
And that's you get a bit recursive there, but then
Yeah.
it does happen again. Why did it happen again?
Yeah, I think one of the risks that I see a lot in the kind of retros in general as well, though not just from incident management, is you'll end up with a team that give themselves an action of, oh, we'll pay more attention on, we'll do code reviews better, we'll do this better. But it's like, how do you? That it's just that kind of non-specific, intangible. We'll pay more attention, or
Yeah,
yeah.
you know, needs to be measurable, or it needs to be an action. You need to be able to, you know, we need to get better at, you know, as you say, code reviews. We'll catch it in a code review next time. You won't.
No, you won't.
You won't. Right? Yeah. We're humans. We will fail. Get the humans out of the process. You know, if it was a manual copy and paste, right? Okay, that's going to happen again. How do we automate it?
Right.
You know, I just see it disappearing out my windows. CABs, change of advisory boards. Don't. If that's an answer of an incident management, wrong answer. Just from my perspective.
Yeah, there's not many questions in the ask the question bit, but I'm seeing scrolling through on chat some things around ITIL. I'm not really digging into the chat. Just a reminder, anybody that does want to ask a specific question, pop it in down the bottom in the ask a question, because I'm not going to keep track of everything that's going in the chat very well. So I think it's definitely a lot of people agreeing with you. I can see lots of agree. That's cool. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, your role specifically and that of leadership, bearing in mind, I guess, the community that we're dealing with, you know, with the CTO Craft particularly. I see an awful lot of people in the CTO Craft community that have kind of made that transition between being very close to the team to maybe having a couple of reports between them. So what's your role must have changed and evolved over the years as well. What kind of advice can you give for people when they're at that tipping point? You don't want to lean in too much and swamp the team. You don't want to leave them alone too much and not be there to support. How do you balance that?
It's it's hard. It's as someone that's gone from engineer to having multiple layers between me and the engineers. I've definitely found it hard to step away. I have done, if it's a new process, I'll come in and do it. But I have definitely tried to step away now, mostly because I've seen the impact of it. So my lovely boss has joined a couple of our incident management calls, and he wasn't fully aware of the impact of him doing that, and I didn't register to me at the time because he's my boss. It doesn't really bother me, but I got feedback afterwards that the team felt like they had to sit straight in their chairs and to their ties and the bosses in. It was a big gulf between an engineer and the CIO who reports into the CEO at a large company. And I had a chat with him afterwards because I was brave and I thought I'd bring it up. And his instant reaction was, "Oh my God!" And that wasn't the intention. I was there just to show that I was on call if they needed me. I was like, "All right, cool, right, good. I do need that, but can you just drop it in the Slack channel saying I'm here if you need me, if you need to provide cover and fire, keep, our CEO and our editor off your backs, I'm here for you." That's super welcome. Coming into the call, please not. Right. And it's that, I think it's awareness of that, and I'm sure if we all asked ourselves, do we really need to be involved? We'd probably know the answer. I find that, I think for smaller CTOs, if you're managing the engineers, you're going to be on call. You're going to know everything. You're going to need to know, and you're playing that technical architectural. As you start maybe having a layer of management between you, I think, which is where I am at the moment, being available, I'm on pager duty if you need me, but I can be at the top tier of an escalation path if it's bubbled all the way up, right? I offer that and being about, and say to the, those that are your managers, like, if it's a big one, ping me or but then service delivery can be like, all right, we'll need to get, if the Economist.com's down for an hour, half an hour or something, like probably need to be, hello, let me handle it. But so it's knowing when, that's about that level, I think.
I guess part of it's demonstrating trust as well in the people that you've got working with you. It's that fine line of how much do you support them and how much do you balance out their trust as well.
And I've found that sometimes, especially with the new teams, I've got a lot. It's a really hard balance because I've got a lot of experience at the coalface at incident management. I can fly through a log processing pretty quick now because I've done it a lot of times. And a new team who hasn't, and I've always found it a hard balance. I'm watching, going, they need to go over here. They need to look over here. But are they going to remember it when they figure it out? Or are they just going to rely on me reminding them every time and striking that balance? So sometimes I'll take a beat and wait, and 9 times out of 10 they get it, right? They're not there as quick as I am because I've done it, but and so it's getting that learning opportunity. Sometimes if it's a critical incident that has been down a while, you might have to just step in.
Right.
It's really hard to get the balance, and it's finding the times and how to. Because you need the team to. They can't always rely on you to be the hero to fix everything. You have to allow the team to learn, and they're only going to do that by at 3 o'clock in the morning figuring it out. Because that's how I learned it. There's no really any way you can practice. Really, you can do all the red table pretend stuff. It's not the same. It's definitely not the same.
It's when users can't get onto your site and everything's down and the CEO screaming
and being able to manage that and having people that manages it for you, it's a very different thing. I have done, I remember, so I was leaving the last job, and we built a system which was really good to the point where I didn't need to put an on-call rota in. It was just me. It only broke every 2 or 3 months to the point where I needed a call, and it wasn't enough for me to do the admin to put an on-call rota on, so I was fine, right? But then I went, hang on, I'm leaving. I'm going to have to start this. But then the team hadn't got to flex the muscles as much, and then a couple of other more experienced engineers were also looking at moving out, who could sub in for me. So it's how do we do this? So we did. We took staging and did pretend things,
right,
and then gave them scenarios, and then we sat in a room and we're customer support and sending them emails and things like that. It was so much. I shouldn't have had so much fun, but I did.
I was just going to say that sounds so much fun. I would love to do that.
There's probably a lot of techie people in here that have dealt with this. My favorite one was they asked for a screenshot, right? Because they wanted to know what browser we were on. So they sent a screen, and they wanted to know the URL. So we sent them a screenshot. So we got our phone and we took a picture of it, but we deliberately missed out the URL and the browser stuff, right? And just took a picture of the page, right? Because we knew exactly why they were wanting it. So we did, and you could hear them cackling with laughter as they're like, "You gits!" As we.
This could make it fun as well, then.
Yeah. And we had a bug that only targeted Safari version 8 or something like that, and it was good fun. But they learned a lot, and it was just really small things we tweaked and broke from, it's always that. It's always like one line, 3 in the morning, 2 hours later, it's that one line. So we were finding them over 2 or 3 years and sort of copying them, and then and gave them something that would last for about an hour or two.
Right.
Go through the motions, dealing with customer support, us doing the communication. They would do a retrospective afterwards. Right. So that was actually going back to that earlier question. I've forgotten that we did that, and that was really good. But it was forced, and we had to do it because we were leaving. Right. So it was priority. Right. It was bumped up the priority list. Baking in time like that again against product priority is hard.
It's an interesting direction as well, though, isn't it? And how do you prepare people to be on call and to learn how to do that? Because for one, some people may have never done it before, and you just don't know. Somebody new to the organisation and may not even know. A lot of people, one of the pushbacks I've seen a lot is, even if I went on call, I wouldn't know how to fix anything. I wouldn't know where anything is. So how do you prepare that?
I've just found you just put them on and go, okay, I know you don't know, but you know who. Right, and who are second line, because a lot of the times on call, it's actually like, no, it's not broken. It was started broken for 5 minutes, but it's come back. Oh, I'll fix that tomorrow. Right, we'll get and fix that tomorrow. And that's something else that I like about engineers being on call, is the feeling the empathy towards the customers, how they feel it. So they go on the website and it's going slow, and suddenly they get a white screen and they go, hang on a minute, on staging I get a pretty error page, and that doesn't, why did it take 60 seconds to time out and then I got a white screen? That's terrible user experience. And it's because we've set the default timeout on our API library, and we've got a different firewall configuration that white screens after 60 seconds, and staging it doesn't exist. And seeing that happen and empathizing and seeing that, if you didn't put an engineer on call, they go, all right, yeah, I've turned it off and I'm going to fix it. Somebody that didn't understand the difference between the two. So that's always one of my big arguments, is that empathy. Like, oh, it's a bit expensive resource to be putting in on call. I'm like, well, no, we get a better product in the end.
Part of that making the case, though, making that argument is I guess having something measurable around it. If you think of the way that the improved service, the revenue you're protecting, there must be, what kind of measurements are you putting around about, because just the stuff we've talked about already, about training people on how to do good on call, about having a good coverage of on-call rota, and then people are working overnight and then they're not working in the day, slowing down delivery of the product roadmap because you're giving them then time to go fix stuff, looking at near misses, looking at stuff that might happen. That could be a full-time job in itself for your engineers, let alone then cutting the code in the first place. So how do you make the case and measure and balance the look, this is worth doing and this is worth investing? So what kind of measurement would you think it's good advice for people to kind of keep track of?
So we measure classes of incidents in number over like a month, and you can break it down on a week-to-week basis. So authentication, login problems with the content management system, couldn't buy a subscription. So we measure that either reported internally by our internal people, but then reported from our customer support, because it's quite laggy, but it's sometimes our monitoring can't catch everything. Our users generally will. So we have that, and then we measure those, and sometimes we'll go, why is login instance going up? That's weird. And then we can dig into that, and we'll go and speak to customer support and get the transcripts if we can, or get any summaries, or reach out to that customer and dig it and go, okay, turns out our app doesn't work for 5G phones. That was the thing. We didn't. Why? That's weird. Right. Why would that? And things like that. It's just while it's laggy, it's very useful. And then measuring that, because that's great, right? You when you have that, you want that to go down, right? And you see, so there's no point in measuring it if you either want it to go down or keep remaining stable. But if it's quite big, you want it to come down, and the areas you can affect going down. Sadly, ours has gone really high in January, but that's a good thing, because we've just got more insights from customer support, where before we were getting minimal. So this first month looked quite bad, but we're actually it's good because we're getting more data. We're getting the raw, because we now own our customer support rather than it being outsourced, and we've got that feed in. That's been really useful. Just means more stuff to fix. So a lot of people going around fixing a lot of stuff, but that's not a bad thing.
More things to learn, obviously.
It's learn. It's but it's fixing customers' subscriptions and their frustrations, and which is it's really important to me, and it's important to like my engineers to empathize that you imagine how annoying it is. You don't want to you don't want to be annoying people with your code, and so that's
But that loops back to those early questions around blame culture and your role as a leader, and how that stuff becomes, and how you use that. Because if you're not careful, that can just be a stick to beat people with. And I can think of many a CTO even that would be, oh, look how many bugs we're getting, look how many incidents we're getting. Like, the engineers are rubbish, this is rubbish, this isn't working, rather than wow, we've got all this information now, how do we go do something with? So yeah, again, need that mind of, we've got a few, I guess, fledgling, new, transitioning CTOs in the in the group, and probably watching today. What kind of advice can you give them of how to get the message right, not just to the engineers but to the wider organization as well?
I guess it's similar. Trust your team, empower your team, get out of their way, and provide them covering fire, because the team know how to fix this stuff.
Yeah.
It's giving them the information and giving them the priority to fix it. Ask and if they can, ask the team why they can't fix it. They're too busy doing other stuff. They haven't got enough people.
And that is something that you as a leader can help with then. Yeah.
You can either fix, or you can go and ask for someone for some money to fix, which is the job I have to do. And if I come and know, I say, well, the consequence of that is this, right? And if we're taking that decision, then this can't happen. We're going to, and it's as a leader, it's your role to make sure that, well, if I can't get more people to make sure, then person that says no,
at least you're armed with the data to go back up those arguments as well. Then the more the stuff you're measuring. There is a question down in that ask a question section, and as predicted, this is from Dennis. It says, a number of times you've mentioned this standard template about how you approach those incidents, and yes, is it possible to share it? And I'm sure you will try and find it.
I'll dig it out. I'll dig out there's a standard set of questions. Some of them are harder to answer than others depending on your maturity, but it's just like
there'll be people making note anyway as we go, and then if there was like half a dozen questions that are the basics, what would you say? Look, if you do nothing else, just ask yourself and your teams these things. This is the stuff you should be looking at.
So the first one's quite hard, but it's always good to get your brain. There's how long was it down? How long was it broken for? How many users were affected? And if you're at a monetary value, how much money did that cost us? Right? Because it sort of frames it with the team, the size and importance of this, right? But it can also be, it was down for 5 minutes, only 3 users did it, and we didn't lose any money. All right, cool, right, that's good, right? But it could be the other way as well. At my last place, we broke Internet Explorer for 3 days. Couldn't check out for 3 days. Yeah, which was great. We lost, I'm sure it was £15,000, which, it's not a huge amount of money, but it's money, right? It's £15,000, and I don't think they ever came back. So, and we were able to quantify that, and then we fixed it. So just having that, it's like, I remember that one quite vividly, and it's good. So start with that. Now, don't spend too long. You can proxy metric, because depending on your maturity, you can't always answer that question. Having a good start, guess it. All right. Okay. So that detailing just what went wrong, detailing recounting the steps of when people went out, when we first found out about the incident, maybe walking back, like if you shipped something on the Monday but didn't break until the Thursday, right? All right, it was, walk through the timeline of the incident. When people were called, who's joined the call, when did you find X, when you found out what the problem was. Just get that time stamped. Having a Slack channel and documenting that can really help, just because you get the timestamps automatically. So as you're finding things, just pasting that in on the night, really useful. Just those steps. It's really simple, but that timeline, again, it's very much like a retrospective. You've got a timeline of, and X, Y, and Z. Doing that, you've got all the information. At that point, your engineers will be defaulting into problem solving mode anyway, because they're in, right, what the problem is, and it's next is, right, what happened, why did we ship that code on Monday, how did it go out, how did we not know about it till Thursday, right? When those are the sort of questions. So it's like, how do we stop it happening again is like the general one, right? And that will go well. And how do we know about it? How do we stop it happening again? How do we know about it sooner if you didn't, if it went Monday to Thursday, right? So it's reducing that time. And how do we recover from it quicker?
Right.
Which it is slightly different to that middle one. It's different to that, how do we know about it sooner? It's different. It seems similar. It's not, that. And then at the bottom of that, trying to pull out the actions that you've come through and detailing them out, like just bullet points. And you can do short term. I generally do short, quick fixes, longer term strategic, so some architecture changes that you might never do, but starts talking, and if you start getting more and more of those instances set on that, if our architecture was a little bit more saner, these classes just wouldn't happen. Right. It adds weight to that refactor, that change. So short, medium term classifying actions. They do that.
And that's a good start.
It's a very good start. And it's not hard.
And it's probably more than a lot of people are doing already, actually, if you can just manage to do that. Just a reminder to everyone that's still watching, we've got just under 10 minutes left. If there are any more questions that you want to send through, use the link at the bottom of the screen. And just while people are thinking of that, if there is anything else, I just wanted to, I guess, towards the end, take it more into a direction of how stuff has changed in this last year and where it's going. Because I remember first time I was on call as way back when I was a developer, back 20 years ago now. And first time I was on call, no one was even allowed to work from home. And literally, if I got a call, it was the Nokia 3210 or whatever it was that would ring, and I would go into the office to go and then deal with why the call center couldn't take any calls or why their system had gone down or something like that. And unfortunately, I lived literally around the corner from the office, so it was easy. So I was probably the first person that did used to get called out. Everybody is now at home and everyone's much more used to it, but just managing the retrospective side of it. And when you're looking at lessons learned, a lot must have changed. And where do you think we're headed? What is more automation? What do you think is gonna change in that whole kind of world of how you manage incidents? Has you seen any changes since the COVID and the lockdowns and the work from homes?
I think it's hard for me because I'm as you're talking about that change in that first call, I was always been able to work from home from my first job randomly, even if it was on dial-up 56k broad,
Yeah.
Or even I do remember getting a Nokia 9500i big phone split in half.
Oh yeah.
Screen and the keyboard, and it had an SSH terminal, and I remember fixing a server down by the river on Edge in Durham a long time ago. So I've always been fortunate to work at places where I could fix things remotely. I've never had to go in, and so it's hard. But I looking back at these core behaviors are the same. I think one thing actually we've been noticing recently, sorry, just as my brain jumps, is anomaly detection. I think anomaly detection is getting better. Now it all depends on the amount of data. So we use New Relic, and we've started to enable some anomaly detection things, which is just spotted a few things. And it just goes, we think this is weird. What do you think? And it can be, nah, that's fine. That's just a spike. We've just done a push notification and everyone's trying to log in at once, right? Fine. Don't worry about it. But I think it was just last week or the week before that it did spot something. It was someone was trying to credential stuff us, and they were just slamming at our APIs. And it went, this isn't normal traffic. You might want to look at it. So I think that, and I've been around a few loops with anomaly detection. I used Elasticsearch and logs in the past, and I never quite got it. It was always not quite right. I did a hack day once, and I put it at our logs, and there was an anomaly. And what was it? Oh, it's just a book that we never sold very often. All right, you sell it once a year. Oh, but it's not an anomaly. I was like, okay. But I spent the whole hack day getting all set up, and it found an anomaly, and it was just like a random
book that no one's bought.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's not very useful. But I haven't really kicked the tires too much on the anomaly detection, but
right.
I just have this inkling that it's another tool. I wouldn't want to rely on it too much, but another tool to the armory. And it depends how much data you get, right? If you've got a small site, you're not getting a lot of traffic. It's hard.
I guess it's the other way as well. One of the feedbacks that how quite often from teams is that actually the amount of monitoring and alerting and logs is just, it ends up just a wall of noise. And then how do you pick out the stuff that's important from some of that more automated stuff?
We find that we log everything. We log so much, it's hard to tell, right? And that's something we need to look. We're going to be looking at. We need to log. Where's our important stuff we log? And and it's asking the question is, if this thing broke, how would you know about it, and how would you diagnose it, and what would you need to know, right? And asking that question, just hard on a pull request. You've got so many requirements, you've got so many things to add. It's another functional requirement. Flexing that muscles, making it easy for engineers not to go, reducing that load on the engineer's brain, to just make it easy. Just go, just write this one line, give it that sort of information. We'll handle it. It'll be there for you if it does ever break. So yeah, that's something we're looking at. But asking that question, how would you know if this broke, and how would you debug it?
There are a couple of people posting things into the chat that lists how they do those postmortems and lessons learned. So I believe when the recording is available, the chat is also saved. I was told yesterday when we were looking at the software. So if you haven't caught those links, I'm sure they can be made available too. And we just have a couple of minutes left. Is there anything else, John, that I haven't asked you that you think you would really like to share with everybody?
Just reading my notes. No, I think we're all right.
Okay, and just while John's doing that, I have copied and I am now pasting into the chat the connection details. If you do want to connect with John afterwards, that's LinkedIn and Twitter. That's all in there as well. There are no more questions cropping up. But scrolling back up, there was that one that you spotted, and I could feel the shudder at the mention of change boards and things. But I think part of that same block of question was around experience of using ITIL's incident management or anything like that. Is there, or do we not talk about that? Is that
I'm not a enterprise level side of that side of the enterprise. So ITILs and change of proof boards are not my thing. Burn them all with fire if you can.
Cool.
But seriously, change of proof boards. I've got around, and they're usually, because I've implemented continuous delivery and deployment at multiple organizations. One where they were like, oh no, everything needs to be QA'd and UAT'd and triplicated before it released. I got around that pretty quick by going, fine, you're in charge of when the features are released. Engineering's in charge of when the code's released. And so you feature flag everything. And that way we can crack on, going at the speed we want, doing and shipping 15 times a day, and then we just feature flag it. And the switch went at that company when they had 4 months of testing how to sell ebooks, and they went, right, we're ready. And we were like, we have been for 4 months, but okay. And we were able, we knew it worked. We tested it with our own credit cards and things. It worked. They went, go. And we went, literally I replied, done. And they went, what? Yeah, it's done. We just toggled the feature flag, and it just like that, it was on. It worked, but it's slowly getting rid of change approval boards. But I think that one, you're in charge of features, product, we're in charge of code. Don't you worry about that. That's our responsibility. And separating it is a quick hack.
Cool. Okay, we are just about out of time then. Thanks everybody that has contributed in the chat and for your questions. Thanks again to AWS for sponsoring. If you're not on CTO Craft Slack community already, come join us, join the conversation. You've got links to John's profile down there, and I will end the broadcast there. Okay, thanks John.
Thanks.
Bye everybody.